There is a unbelievable concentration of talent in this country. This includes folks who are in the workforce, who have real skills, real grit, who are juggling challenges and obligations that we couldn't even imagine while performing in their job. But they are locked away in a number of these different industries without a clear pathway out of them. That is not because they lack the grit, the determination, the skills. It is more that the system that we've created, the environment, is designed to block them out. And there are a lot of different ways that the system is designed to block them out. I think one of the most often cited and discussed is this paper ceiling of requiring a bachelor's degree for these jobs. Millions of jobs across the country require bachelor's degrees that actually don't need them because it's an easy proxy for companies to use. And so with the recognition that there is incredible talent that is hiding in the companies, the spaces, the communities that we are navigating in every day, there is also this recognition that what's missing is a program that is flexible, that meets them where they're at, that allows them to learn while they earn and support their families. And that's so much what Merit America is about. It's a fast, flexible program that people can take while they continue in their current jobs. Because so many of the programs that are out there right now require folks to leave their jobs. They're full-time and they're often very expensive. And so much of our work is how do we pivot around the learner to unlock them in a system that has blocked them for decades.
Well, Rebecca and Connor, it's great to have you. I can't even explain exactly how I know you two because I knew Connor from college. Then Beth Kober, who was on our show a while ago, recommended you two as being like incredible founders and innovators in the workforce development space. And of course, I've admired Merit America from afar for a long time. So it's a really great opportunity to talk to you. Thanks for joining.
Great to be here.
Thanks for having us. We've been admiring you too. So there's a lot of admiration on this call.
Yeah, lots of things to dig into, and I appreciate that. Doing my best to try to do this like podcast content series thing, But anyways, yeah, let's dive in because I'm sure there's so many things that people love to hear about, and I'm very curious about. But maybe we'll start from sort of the beginning. Why did you start Merit America, and what's the core workforce development problem you're trying to solve with the organization?
Rebecca and I cut our teeth at the ed tech company Coursera. We were both one of the early employees there. And we were attracted to Coursera for its vision of universal access to the world's best education. And for two people whose families profoundly benefited from education and from the American dream, this idea that we could unlock similar opportunities for people across the country was so exciting. And so while we were at Coursera, we helped build the B2B business and creating a product and services that were being provided to companies and nonprofits and governments around the world. And we were really excited about the breadth and the reach of the impact. But there was this one Uber ride that Rebecca and I were in. It was a work trip in New York, and we were talking shop about Coursera in the back of the Uber. And the Uber driver, right before they dropped us off, he turned around and he said, "Oh, Coursera! I've heard of Coursera. I actually took a class at Coursera, and I completed." And Rebecca and I were so excited because not a lot of people completed at the time. And they're like, "Oh, we get to meet a user. We get to meet someone who we're helping." And he said, "Yeah, I completed," but then nothing happened. And there was this recognition that the courses and the opportunities that we're providing were disproportionately going to the folks who had college degrees, folks who already knew how to navigate the system, and meanwhile leaving millions of individuals, namely working adults, behind. And that's where Merit America comes in. Merit America is focused on supporting the 53 million low-wage working adults in this country, folks who are working, but who are stuck in low-wage work and can't support their families.
And what I'll add to that is I had the chance to work in government before joining Coursera, working a lot on K-12 education and higher education. And I remember being at a state town hall where we talked about all the work we were doing to increase graduation rates and applications to college and attendance in college. And someone in the audience said, "This is all great, but the data shows only 1 in 10 low income students is actually earning a college degree. And the rest are hitting the low wage workforce, often with debt and no degree. So, what are we doing for them?" And there was a pause, and we shared our talking point on that issue, which is, well, let's tell you about our great early childhood education work for their kids. Because for so long in our country, we focused on what can we do with the formal education system? How do we make primary school and secondary and post-secondary better? But when those systems fail, folks, and they land, again, in a low-wage job, sometimes with debt, but no degree, we don't have an answer for what they should do to get ahead. And that's what we're building in here in America.
That's really powerful and inspiring story, like that motivates you to build here. Curious, what are some insights you've gained around the learner population you're serving, the people you're trying to really empower, that have really defined like the solution you've ended up creating?
Yeah, I think one is that there is a unbelievable concentration of talent in this country. And, this includes folks who are in the workforce, who have real skills, real grit, who are juggling challenges and obligations that we couldn't even imagine while performing in their job. But they are locked away in a number of these different industries without a clear pathway out of them. And that is not because they lack the grit, the determination, the skills. It is more that the system that we've created, the environment, is designed to block them out. And there are a lot of different ways that the system is designed to block them out. I think one of the most often cited and discussed is this paper ceiling of requiring a bachelor's degree for these jobs. Millions of jobs across the country require bachelor's degrees that actually don't need them because it's an easy proxy for companies to use. And so with the recognition that there is incredible talent that is hiding in the companies, the spaces, the communities that we are navigating in every day, there is also this recognition that what's missing is a program that is flexible, that meets them where they're at, that allows them to learn while they earn and support their families. And that's so much what Merit America is about. It's a fast, flexible program that people can take while they continue in their current jobs, because so many of the programs that are out there right now require folks to leave their jobs. They're full-time and they're often very expensive. And so much of our work is how do we pivot around the learner to unlock them in a system that has blocked them for decades.
One thing we've learned is there's just so much talent in this country that is untapped. And I remember actually recently having a dinner party with a close friend, and I was talking about the work we're doing to help incredibly talented individuals who work in Amazon fulfillment centers get skills for in-demand careers and build their careers within and outside of Amazon. And she kind of interrupted me and she said, "Well, are there really enough folks who are working in fulfillment centers who can learn new skills and get these jobs that are in high demand?" And I think that is such a dangerous belief that somehow, people are in these jobs because they don't have the ability to learn to get into upwardly mobile careers, when really they're in those jobs because of a system that has failed them, often from birth, has closed doors instead of opening doors. And what we've seen time and again is that a short intervention where you can meet folks where they are with programs that are fast and flexible and aligned to in-demand careers is all it takes to help someone go from earning $25,000 a year to on a path to the middle class and beyond.
Yeah, and I really like sort of how worker-centric you've been, it seems like, as you design the program, understanding the constraints that they face and trying to make this learning opportunity fit around their realistic life sort of things that they're navigating and juggling. One of the things that I've noticed is there are a lot of really great workforce development organizations around the country, but many of them struggle to do it at scale. There are a lot of like really good small like niche organizations that are local, but for whatever reason, it seems really hard to then take that model and really bring it to the masses and support like hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of folks. Merit America is one of the organizations people repeatedly talk about as someone who's kind of figured out the scaling challenge of workforce development. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on, well, what do you think about how you figured out scale? And like, what are some of the secrets that have allowed you to get here?
I think one of the big unlocks for us was designing for scale from the very beginning. So that was the problem that we set out to solve. How can we create a mainstream pathway to the middle class for 53 million Americans who are stuck in low-wage jobs? And I have a very funny video of our earliest days, our very first cohort, where, as we'll talk more about, a key part of our model is there's a lot of on your own time learning coupled with individual coaching and group coaching. And we were trying to schedule the group coaching sessions. And one of our teammates had printed out the calendars she received from our first 70 participants and was trying to match up availability with coaches to figure out, is it going to be, Tuesday, 6 to 8 p.m. or Saturday, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. for these squad meetings. And she's putting all these calendars together. She looks at the camera and deadpans and she goes, now this will not scale. And it was just such a good reminder that in our earliest days, we were always obsessed with let's only do things now that we can imagine doing at massive scale. And so thankfully, Calendly and other tools solved that scheduling problem for us. But we pretty systematically looked at all of the things we needed to do and all of the reasons they haven't been able to scale in the past. And wherever possible, designed the opposite. Connor can talk a little bit about how that specifically impacts our job placement strategy, which we're really excited about.
One thing I would actually say also for folks who are not as familiar with Merit America, it might be good to give a quick overview. You touched on it a little bit, Rebecca, but quickly touch upon like your model, and so that people understand like, okay, what is the thing that you do as you think about scale?
Yeah, so the model it's a fully virtual part-time program where folks can learn in-demand skills and get placed into upwardly mobile careers. So at Merit America, we are kind of a full stack service provider. We find learners, we support them through their training by pairing them with an incredible coach. And then after they complete the training and get a certificate, they're then placed with another coach who helps them with the job placement and actually finding a new job. This whole process takes, between 4 and 6 months, depending on the track and the learner. And we are constantly thinking about new ways to, again, pivot around the learner and figure out ways to unblock them and to meet them where they're at. So the least romantic way to think about our model is online learning with best-in-class coaching. And this again, it came from our early days at Coursera with the recognition that there is incredible content out there. Like we have never seen so much academic and job-focused content in the world. But so often what's missing is how do you figure out what to take? How do you complete those courses? And then how do you apply the courses and the credentials to actually meaningfully improve your life? And that's where the wraparound coaching comes into play. One reflection that we've been thinking about recently is that our approach to Merit America is actually pretty counter to what you hear from a lot of other entrepreneurs and advisors, where they say, don't worry about scale early on. Like just create a product, create an offering for your end user, and then figure out how to scale after it, but really focus on customer value. And I just want to call out that our approach was different, and both work. But from the beginning, we wanted to solve a real market failure. And that is there are 53 million working adults in this country who are not making a living wage, folks who are in a job, but not able to support their families. And quite frankly, Rebecca and I just aren't interested in this problem or in this space if we aren't able to develop a scalable solution. And so every decision that we've made at every juncture has been asked. We have asked that same question: will this scale? And that's from the ratio of learners to our coaches, to our variable costs, to our acquisition strategies, to our go-to-market. And that has worked for us, but it's different from a number of other entrepreneurs. But for us, that's because scale is in our DNA, and it's really part of our central thesis and the problem that we're trying to solve.
What's an example of a decision you had to make where you had to trade off between, often there's a scale and like sort of impact trade-off organizations make as they do that. Is there something where you felt like you had to make the right kind of call early on that has helped you down the right path?
I think it's actually been the opposite, in that one of the most surprising and exciting discoveries throughout this journey is that scale actually can unlock additional impact. What I mean by that is, when we were serving 50 learners, it would be inconceivable to think about offering differentiated tracks, or bringing on a world-class data team to analyze different junctures in the learning journey, or to offer emergency support services and stipends. And each of these different products and offerings and the insight into our learner base has grown with our learner base. And that's where you see a lot of these network effects. And so much of our strategy has been identifying the value that is driven from additional scale and really narrowing on that, because the more that we do that and the more that we scale, the more that we have that, the more value we're driving to learners, the more we are building our competitive advantage in this space. And again, recentering on that differentiator as of scale that is so core to what we do. So I actually, it's easier for me to think about ways that scale has unlocked us than scale and our impact, rather than has hindered us and the impact that we're driving to our learners.
Anything you're at, Rebecca? I love that, by the way. And it seems like you've been very intentional about feeding back into the product and the solution you're building, like new offerings that can be unlocked as you grow, and it seems like you're very strategic about that. And that's partly why you were able to keep on innovating and attracting more people and then providing better service. And it's like a really, good positive reinforcement loop there.
I would totally echo this myth that somehow there's a trade-off between impact and scale. We've really seen that scale fuels our ability to drive impact. I think one other place this manifests is this idea of, well, every employer needs something bespoke. And if you really want to get folks into these in-demand jobs, you need to design very custom programs for employers. One thing we've learned many times is that when you actually go to an employer and say, what do you need? At first they will say, oh, it's totally custom. We have our own systems, our own skill sets. But when you actually work with them on putting it on paper and you put in front of them, let's say a standard curriculum for a data analytics professional or advanced manufacturing professional, you hear two things. One, you hear is, yeah, this is like 80 to 90% what we need. And two, we probably don't want to spend the time to get it to 100%. And I think folks think that somehow workforce development organizations need to do something that the labor market doesn't do. The labor market doesn't give you someone who is bespoke trained in your systems prior to hiring. They give you someone who has a solid foundation, transferable skill set, and the ability to learn on the job. And so by focusing there, and that's what we're developing, we're able to create a much more scalable workforce program than if we really said we need to be custom designed for every single employer we work with.
That resonates a lot. I mean, even for some of the programs and the things that we offer. And in fact, it feels like having really good pre-made tracks make it easier for, employers to say, hey, like, it's very easy and quick to start with this, and I don't have to like design everything from scratch. And to your point, oftentimes they initially ask about customization, and later on they're like, actually, we don't need that. Like, we care about speed and like quick impact, and the customization is like not as critical. And so that resonates as well.
Well, and so much of our impact to date has been focused on how much can we run really fast experimentation cycles, learn, adapt, redeploy. And when you're thinking about these experiments, you're thinking about the size of your user base, or the statistical power of those experiments. You want as much standardization as you can, such that you are actually able to get real signal on what's working and what isn't. And every fragmentation, I mean, it comes at a real cost. It comes at a cost of teammates' time. It comes from additional, dollar investments, but then also just your learning is much harder to parse. And then that's been, again, core to our approach as well. We need to be as adaptable and as dynamic as the labor market that our learners are getting placed into. And that means a real emphasis on experimentation and learning. And that means that we don't want to cleave the product in too many directions if we don't have to. And that's what allows us to drive real insight. And that's going to become even more true when you think about artificial intelligence and these large language models and the training data that we have. We want to be able to aggregate this data to be able to have a real point of view around these are things that are working. And so just recognizing that those customizations, while they can seem really sexy, there are all these hidden costs.
Yeah, really good point around like its impact on your ability to learn and get real signal. I would like to shift the focus a little bit on the learners themselves. You've now gone through and offered this program for so many people who benefited from Merit America. And I'm curious, one of the things you hear a lot about workforce development is that, people are busy, they're juggling a lot of things, and you really have to support them to sustain and like stick through it. And sometimes, life gets in the way and they sort of pause. But I'm sure you've now seen lots of data on kinds of learners who are very well fit for this kind of program and succeed, and others where it's not quite as good of a fit. Like, I'm wondering if you've gotten perspective on that. Like, who are your most successful learners that benefit best from Merit America?
I think there are definitely different learner profiles that are more or less likely to succeed, but I actually think it's on us at Merit to figure out how we have program options that meet people where they are. And so we are constantly thinking about what is the right mix between fully on your own self-directed learning and live touch points with your peers and with your coaches and your technical advisors. What is the mix between hours per week and number of weeks it's going to take to finish? And I remember, one thing that we've actually gotten pretty lucky at is our very initial model. We found a balance that seemed to really work. Our very first week of our very first pilot, we had a Sunday 5 p.m. deadline for the first async work that was due. And there was, live touch points that people had joined. But we logged on at 4:15 p.m., 45 minutes before the deadline, and not a single person had finished. And we, started pulling our hair out like, oh gosh, back to the drawing board. We're seeing the same issues that the big online players have in terms of folks starting but not finishing. And then starting about 4:50 p.m., the first one came in, and then 4:52 and 4:57. And by 4:59, in that 9-minute span, the entire cohort got their work in. And so we saw the power of even just having weekly deadlines in a group that are committing to each other, that we're all going to get it done by then, in driving the ability to complete. And so in general, yes, folks who can find 10 to 20 hours a week of learning for 3 to 6 months, people who really want a new career, not just vaguely, but are at a point in their life where they say, I'm ready to have a massive change in my life and to put in the work to make it happen. Those are the folks who do best in our programs. They come from food service, retail, the gig economy, logistics and fulfillment work. But we see our goal as designing models that can meet any one of the 53 million low-wage workers where they are, so they know it's never too hard or too late to get the skills for a great new career.
Yeah. And I think one thing to know about the folks that we're trying to serve is that they are inundated with programs and offerings and predatory products that make it really difficult for good actors, I think we're a good actor, to be able to cut through and reach them. If you look at Merit America on Reddit, the number one Reddit thread, I think this is still true to this day, I was just about to check, is Merit America a scam? And that's because everything that we're offering, paying nothing unless you get put into a job, fully remote, flexible, meets you where you're at, fast, aligned to industry, into upwardly mobile careers and industry credentials. All of these things feel too good to be true, despite the fact that they should be table stakes. And that's one of the real frustrating things for us when we talk about Merit America and how we think about, serving the learner and centering on their needs. We're talking about how any other private sector organization would think about the customer journey and driving value to their end user. But for some reason, in education and workforce, this is like revolutionary. This is not the norm. When you think about who is actually, how do we determine the curricula or the tracks that people take in colleges and universities? I mean, it's set by faculty. It's often not super learner centric, and so that is it's a big difference. But again, it's a gap that we hope will close over time and become more normalized. And then to Rebecca's point, just the recognition that our learners are super busy. They have many obligations. They have no time, and they often have very little margin for error. One of our learners named Paula, she told us that she saw Merit America, I think a TikTok influencer, and then she kept getting ads for Merit America over the course of a year. She was working part-time, she was supporting her family. And then after a year of seeing Merit America and learning more about it, she finally said, she woke up one day and she said, quote, "Today is the day that I changed my life." And she joined Merit America. And I raise that to say that it is a hard segment to break into, if only because they have so much going on. But we're looking for folks who are willing to take the leap, who are ready to really invest. And if they have that grit and they're able to carve out that time, then it's on us to deliver the outcomes that they're looking for.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. I mean, and careers are a really big decision for people. It's not something you can kind of on a whim do. So to your point, even if it's the right rational decision, you also have to emotionally get to the point where, okay, this is what I've been doing. I want to reinvent myself. And so you're almost taking them on a journey to do that. Curious, because you're so learner focused, I'm curious what kind of insight you've gained into sort of learners and sort of their mindset and helping them really shift their mindset. Any learnings around, one, helping people take that risk? So one is on the early side, getting them to really join your program and messaging that has worked. And secondly, any interventions you do to prevent people from giving up too fast and really persist that has worked?
I think one of the biggest insights has been how much of this is a mindset shift game, and that we win when our coaches meet our learners where they are and say, you are not alone in thinking that somehow you have failed because of where the system has put you. And yet you have everything you need inside of yourself to get through this program, to get a great job, and to be wherever you want to be in life. And so I think that's the unspoken part of this work that is so important, of letting folks know that it's not too hard. It's not too late. Anyone can learn. We have them all often take the class learning how to learn, which is one of the biggest skill sets that they'll take from Merit America. Is not what they learn in their program, but it's this idea that the information is out there and they can gain it and use education to make their lives better at any point in time. We hear so many alumni who get that first job after Merit and then keep learning and growing from there and working their way up the career ladder because of the work that they did during the program. So I think that's one big important focus of ours. And the other I'll say we don't talk a lot about is just the importance of making it joyful. I think sometimes we have this idea that learning should be hard and unpleasant and homework and the thing you have to do. But our coaches are constantly thinking of ways to connect with learners, to make it fun, I was just actually chatting with a coach of ours who led a session on negotiation and how to know if the initial offer is the right salary for you, how to negotiate. If it's not, how to look at benchmarks. And at the end of the session, they all play and sing along to the Rihanna song, "B Better Have My Money." They replace it with "Boss Better Have My Money." But the idea of know your value, know what the job should pay depending on the title and the responsibilities in the market. And I'm sure that lesson is infinitely more memorable because of that touch than it would be if it were just going through, various slides and pointers. So again, the idea that you've got to invest in the mindset shift and you have to make it joyful are two things we hold very dear.
Yeah, I love that. And it's good, Vince. Now we have our walk-off music for this podcast, so you know what to play. I think just underscoring one thread through Rebecca's comments that is the most important thing that we do to help with commitment and persistence, and that is the coaching. You can have the most incredible resources and opportunities out there, but if you don't know how to navigate it, if you don't know how to translate the opportunities and your needs and your skills, it really doesn't make a difference. And so much of what Merit America is about is providing that bridge that is the coach to help our learners who have this incredible potential and these incredible skills access that new opportunity. And we think that coach layer, that human layer, is something that is just intrinsic to the human condition. We want to feel like we are part of a community. We want to feel understood. We want to feel seen. We don't want to feel alone. And we think that will continue to be true. We're betting on it continuing to be true, even as we see these advancements in AI. People want people, and people are designed, we evolved to learn in community with one another. And that's why we think so much of what Merit America, so much of what we try to do at Merit America has manifested because of these exceptional coaches who are able to translate these experiences into opportunity.
Yeah. The human-to-human connection, especially more especially in the age of AI, really resonates as well. I think I agree with you that it's woven into the fabric of who we are as species, that we care about others, we're motivated by people around us, and it seems like you're really sort of pulling on that as a main support mechanism for the people. I'm curious, as you now look forward, what do you think is the biggest opportunity and or risk you see in workforce development as a sector or a problem space that we have to grapple with?
I think the biggest opportunity is how do we make these quote unquote alternative programs mainstream? How do we go from this one size fits all idea of if you want a great career that pays well with upward mobility, you go to college, to recognizing that college is great, having a college degree is great, and not having a college degree doesn't mean that you should be stuck in a life of low wage work. And so creating pathways where anyone, anywhere can get the skills they want for a great career, whether that's a short form certificate, an apprenticeship, again, this whole bucket of quote unquote college alternatives is really exciting to us.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, I mean, there are a lot of challenges. There are challenges related to the labor market and disruption. There are challenges in terms of investments in the space and different types of financing for programs like ours. How do we support nonprofits and social enterprises such that they can actually reach scale that is, really right now reserved for private sector organizations? But probably the most profound and pernicious challenges that we encounter every day are cultural. They are hiding in the minds of hiring managers and HR leaders across the country that are focused on how do we think about what does talent look like, that is tied to the associations with a college degree and how that is and should be the primary gatekeeper to opportunity. And fundamentally, how we think about the American dream in this country, and recognizing that while for so many of us, especially for folks, disproportionately folks who are in power, who are in Congress, the American dream looks like it's working great, right? Where you have these incredible college experiences that you can talk about and how these led to a job. And it's really easy to grow callous to the actual challenges that exist for so many folks across this country, and the recognition that the American dream is really broken and it's more a fantasy. And we need a kind of reckoning, in a cultural reckoning, a political policy reckoning with that narrative. And that's tied to so much of what Rebecca's talking about. And how do we make these alternative pathways mainstream? How do we have the policy and cultural infrastructure to prop them up? And in so doing, prop up the 53 million folks who are currently boxed out.
I'm sure you've had many conversations with leaders across different sectors about this problem as you grow Merit America. What are the sort of the narratives or the positioning or the framing you found most effective in helping people rethink like their initial biases or understanding of how labor market works to what you say, which is there's a ton of talent out there and we can't let the college degree gatekeep talented people from reaching their full potential?
I think one thing that's resonated with folks is our own experience. So at Merit America, we've hired dozens, literally dozens of our alumni, and they're often the best interviewees. They are the best new hires. They do amazing work at Merit, and being able to make the case that in many ways, you're better off hiring someone who doesn't have a typical background, a typical, traditional 4-year college degree, but has over a decade of work experience, has put in the time and the energy to gain new skills while working, that those folks make incredible teammates and often are more likely to stay and grow in your company than someone who has never had work experience. All they have is that piece of paper showing that they were able to finish a 4-year college degree. So we let the proof be in our graduates themselves, who speak wonders to the model and the idea that talent is everywhere, but opportunity is not.
Yeah. And I think also getting people to honestly reflect on what are we actually trying to achieve? When we think about the workforce development system, when we think about higher education, what do we actually care about? And what at their core are these systems, these institutions designed to drive? What's the job to be done of these institutions? And putting on the shelf for a minute how they are currently structured. Like, what do we actually care about? We care about our nation's economic competitiveness and stability and prosperity. We care about folks being able to support their families and being able to invest in and support their communities. We care about avoiding a sense of stagnation and instead pursuing real advancement and growth that is cross-generational, intergenerational. When you think about these things that we actually care about, and then you orient around them, the solutions start to become much clearer. And we've had a lot of folks, or a lot of luck with folks on the Hill, and find that there's more similarity than there is distance. And actually, we're lucky because the work that Merit America does, it really does reach across the aisle for both Democrats and Republicans, because we care about those things. Because while the American dream might be broken, we can all agree on the core tenets of the American dream that we should be pursuing, right? So whether or not folks don't have access to it, that doesn't change the fact that these are the things that we all want. And so I think that continuing to center on what are we actually trying to achieve, when we do that, it really greases the wheels for alternative programs, but then also new innovations in higher education and workforce in the pre-existing institutions as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and love how you can really center around a message that is agnostic of your political beliefs, because they're the sort of the core tenets of what defines opportunities look like here. I'm curious, what is the main priority that you currently see for Merit America for the next year, 2 years?
I think one of the biggest things we're focused on right now is executing. So we have had a huge success in our first few years. We've reached 12,000 learners. Folks go on average from making $26K before our program to $50,000 or more just a few months after. And what we're really focused on is all of the things that we want to do to take this model to even greater impact and scale. Let's do it. Let's stick the landing. We need to expand our offerings from the 6 tracks we offer today to a wide number of tracks that are aligned to the most in-demand careers. We need to continue to scale nationally while also showing that when we go deep in a single region or place, we can bring all the pieces together to go even further than we would with just a purely national approach. And we need to keep having a team that is best-in-class talent who are showing up every day and bringing their A game to helping talented Americans stuck in low-wage jobs get great new careers. So it's less about the new things that we're doing and more making sure that we are relentlessly focused on excellent execution.
And as you do that, is there anything that you're most excited about, either for the organization or for yourselves as you navigate sort of the next phase?
I think we're really excited. I probably shouldn't say this. I don't want to jinx it. I think we are cautiously optimistic about some of the progress movement that we're seeing on a policy level. And, again, conversations that we're having with policymakers, there just seems to be real alignment around this issue. The recognition that we are not doing right by the folks that Merit America serves and that we can do better. So I think that is very exciting for both of us and something that feels distinct just in the last couple of years.
Is there a why now behind that? Like, do you see why it's suddenly becoming something that you see momentum behind?
I think that we are getting better at putting language to the problem, and this is in large part due to leaders like Opportunity to Work, right? Who have been phenomenal at naming. Look, stars, right? Like these individuals who are skilled through alternative routes, the paper ceiling, the obstacles that folks who are trained through alternative routes face every day. And so I think our language is getting much tighter and allows people to really grok what the problem is. That I think has helped spark some of the cultural change that we mentioned before. And I think that the data is really clear. There are tens of millions of individuals in this country who are boxed out of opportunity. And when that happens, we all suffer. They suffer. Their families suffer, their communities suffer, but also we are a less prosperous, less secure country as a result. And so I think that more of the recognition of how these micro trends are affecting all of us and the macro, I think have helped as well. But we're really buoyed by that. We think that there's going to be some really cool stuff coming down the pike, and there already is, that's focused on these alternative pathways, and that's really exciting. And Rebecca and I are also, I think, we are always so jazzed about this question around how do you create a world-class organization, and how do we keep taking big swings both for our learners but also for our employees, and thinking about how do we attract, retain, and grow talent, because so much of Merit America's success has been driven by the team, and we just have to be relentlessly focused on that and the culture. And we feel so lucky to be working alongside the leaders in this sector at Merit America. And we can't grow complacent, right? We can't be lazy or take that for granted. And so just continuing to think about what's our employee value proposition, what's our culture, how do we really hone it for where we want to go in pursuit of that impact and scale for our learners.
Any final words you would add, Rebecca?
I think Connor said it perfectly.
Yeah. Thank you both so much for joining and sharing about an organization that I personally really admire, especially as a fellow founder who's working on helping people build skills and get unlock their potential. And I'll be cheering, and I really hope that people check out Merit America and the great work it's doing. And yeah, looking forward to staying in touch as well.
Thank you, Vince. So great to connect as always.